Yeah.
Hello again. Some of you will be aware that in September I'm attempting to cycle from St Malo on the northwest coast of France down to Nice in the southeast on the Mediterranean coast, taking in Mont Ventoux, the Beast of Provence, along the way. If you watch my videos, you may also know that the thought of taking on Ventoux scares the crap out of me right now. But as I'm attempting to do it to raise funds for the wonderful Zoe's Place baby hospice, I'm going to do what I can to be as well prepared for it as I can be. There's a lot of climbing over the 14 days before we get to Ventoux as well. So the hills that I can practice on around here, they just won't cut it. I do a fair bit of cycling up and down the same hills local to me, but to be honest, it's not the same as tackling a longer hill as part of a longer ride. It becomes boring and repetitive, and being so near home, it feels much easier just to call it a day when you're knackered and go home because it's starting to feel difficult. In France, we're being looked after by the amazing people at Pedal Britain. So as part of my preparation, I've entered the Tour de Yorkshire Dales challenge at the end of April. We're based in Harrogate for the 4 days and ride 4 loops in different directions across the 4 days for a total of 269 miles and just under 17,000 feet of climbing. Possibly a doddle to those of you who live in the Yorkshire Dales, but a significant step up for anything I have around here. My pal Tim, who lives in the Dales near Thirsk, always tells me it's God's country. Looking at the elevation changes, I hope I remember to look round and appreciate it. On day 1, we have what's being called a Familiarization ride through Nidderdale, a shorter and flatter ride to start with, of 43 miles and 1,620 feet of climbing, covering some roads I've actually cycled on last year on day 1 of Tour de Zoe's, where we cycled between the 3 hospices in Middlesbrough, Liverpool and Coventry. We take in the historic town of Knaresborough, which I remember well, with its ruined castle and stunning view over the River Nidd and viaduct. Finishing then on the traffic-free Beryl Burton cycleway back to Harrogate, which is named after Yorkshire's 7-time cycling world champion. With that one in the bag, the real training for September starts on day 2, taking us on a loop through Wharfdale and over 5,000 feet of climbing in 71 miles. Through places I've heard about like Hebden and Grassington, and past the glacier creation that is Kilnsey Crag. After a well-earned lunch, we follow the River Wharfe through Burnsall, Appletree Wick, Ilkley and Otley, and heading north back to Harrogate once we reach Poole in Wharfdale. The last bit was a relief to me as we miss Old Poole Bank in Poole, which remains possibly the hardest climb I've ever done, that we did last year with a fair bit of cursing and gasping going on. That was 15, that bit. 20% bloody Nora. Just round that corner, please. I'm pretty sure there'll be plenty of others to make up for Old Poole Bank's absence in this ride. Day 3 will be the most challenging of the 4 in terms of mileage and ascent. 84 miles and over 6,500 feet of climbing. Following part of the 2014 Tour de France route actually, when it started in England. And it takes us over somewhere called Blubberhouse's Moor, although any blubbering will probably be happening a little later on in the day. We cycle through Wharfdale initially, through into Bishopdale and Wensleydale via Kidstones Pass, which is apparently the easy route out of Wharfdale. The gradient map doesn't exactly look easy, but having said that, at only 3 kilometres long and hitting 12 to 15% just for a short period, the pain will be short-lived, thankfully. I've cycled once before in the Yorkshire Dales, a couple of years ago, and I won't be fooled the way I was back then. If your head's unit is showing you the climbs on the route you're on, then just add up the total ascent of those climbs and you'll see you're miles short of the total quoted descent for the entire ride. Not something I'd noted back then. There's hardly any flat terrain in these places, and the rest of the ascent total of the ride is the constant short, sharp 10% ramps. Too short for my Garmin to even categorise as a climb, but strength sapping as they appear all day on any ride in the Yorkshire Dales. The exertions of the day will probably mean Billy Boy here is falling asleep in his dinner by 9 o'clock. So it'll be an early night to recharge the batteries for the next day. Day 4 is 70 miles and takes us into Nidderdale. Initially past the Tour de France monument, an obvious photo stop methinks, with a brief detour to the spectacular and strange looking Brimham Rocks. Then on to the village of Lofthouse, which marks the start of what looks like the toughest climb of the day, Trapping Hill. It averages 9% for its 3 kilometres and briefly hits 17. It does look like the worst is over by halfway though, so it's just a case of how the legs feel after the accumulation of 4 days of climbing. Apparently, the terrain of that hill is like the entire day, the worst being over by halfway. So we've got an easier second half of the day. With the emphasis on easier, it certainly won't be easy. I did Land's End to John and Croach with Pedal Britain, so I know what will follow next. After a shower and change, it's the culmination of several days building camaraderie with a group of people I don't yet know, apart from my pal Clive, who did LEJOG with me. A celebratory dinner, plenty of stories told, laughs, drinks, and promises to keep in touch. And in my experience, that's actually what does happen. In September, I tackle France end to end, including the beast that's Mont Ventoux, and I'm looking forward getting to know new people across the 14 days, but the whole thing's made less daunting by the fact there are at least 7 of us who share the LEJOG experience on that trip in September. These multi-day trips really do epitomise a phrase I came across years ago: there is no such thing as strangers, just friends you haven't met yet. For now then, it's one thing at a time, so Ventoux can be pushed aside, and I'm really looking forward to cycling with a group from Yorkshire over the 4 days, and of course celebrating together with new friends in Harrogate once it's all over. So it should be a great workout for my climbing legs. And with the climb up Ventoux being around 14 miles long, my God, I think I badly need that. Here's a brief video about my France challenge for Zoe's Place. Here's a playlist of my LEJOG trip to whet your appetite for multi-day cycling. Click on this yellow icon to subscribe to see all my past and future videos. In the meantime, happy cycling, and I'll see you soon.